The Melbourne Cup is one of Australia's most prestigious thoroughbred horse races. It is a 3,200 metres race for 3-year-olds and over. It is the richest 2-mile handicap in the world, and one of the richest turf races, conducted annually by the Victoria Racing Club on the Flemington Racecourse in Melbourne, Victoria. The event starts at 3 p.m. on the first Tuesday in November. The first race was held in 1861 over 2 miles but was shortened to 3,200 metres in 1972 when Australia adopted the metric system. This reduced the distance by 18.688 metres, and Rain Lover's 1968 race record of 3 minutes 19 seconds and 1 millisecond was accordingly adjusted to 3 minutes 17 seconds and 9 milliseconds. The present record holder is the 1990 winner Kingston Rule with a time of 3 minutes 16 seconds and 3 milliseconds. Qualifying and race conditions. The race is a quality handicap for horses 3 years old and over, run over a distance of 3,200 metres, on the first Tuesday in November at Flemington Racecourse. The minimum handicap weight is 50 kg. There is no maximum weight, but the top allocated weight must not be less than 57 kg. The weight allocated to each horse is declared by the VRC handicapper in early September. The Melbourne Cup race is a handicap contest in which the weight of the jockey and riding gear is adjusted with ballast to a nominated figure. Older horses carry more weight than younger ones, and weights are adjusted further according to the horse's previous results. Weights were theoretically calculated to give each horse an equal winning chance in the past, but in recent years the rules were adjusted to a quality handicap formula where superior horses are given less severe weight penalties than under pure handicap rules. Weight penalties. After the declaration of weights for the Melbourne Cup, the winner of any handicap flat race of the advertised value of $55,000 or over to the winner, or an internationally recognized listed group, or graded handicap flat race, shall carry such additional weight for each win as the VRC handicapper shall determine. Fees. Entries for the Melbourne Cup usually close during the first week of August. The initial entry fee is $600 per horse. Around 300 to 400 horses are nominated each year, but the final field is limited to 24 starters. Following the allocation of weights, the owner of each horse must on 4 occasions before the race in November declare the horse as an acceptor and pay a fee. First acceptance is $960, second acceptance is $1,450 and third acceptance is $2,420. The final acceptance fee, on the Saturday prior to the race, is $45,375. Should a horse be balloted out of the final field, the final declaration fee is refunded. Balloting conditions. The race directors retained the absolute discretion to exclude any horse from the race, or exempt any horse from the ballot on the race. But in order to reduce the field to the safety limit of 24, horses are balloted out based on a number of factors which include prize money earned in the previous 2 years, wins or placings in certain lead-up races, allocated handicap weight. The winner of the following races are exempt from any ballot: Lexus Stakes, LKS McKinnon Stakes, Cox Plate, Caulfield Cup, the Bat Cummings, Doncaster Cup, Irish St Leger, Tenno Show, Sankey Show All Comers, Arlington Million, San Juan Capistrano Handicap, Australian Stayers Challenge. The limitation of 24 starters is stated explicitly to be for safety reasons. However, in the past far larger numbers were allowed. The largest field ever raced was 39 runners in 1890. quarantine. International horses that are entered for the Melbourne Cup must undergo quarantine in an approved premises in their own country for a minimum period of 14 days before travelling to Australia. The premises must meet the Australian government standards. The Werribee International Horse Centre at Werribee Racecourse is the Victorian quarantine station for international horses competing in the Melbourne Spring Racing Carnival. The facility has stabling for up to 24 horses in 5 separate stable complexes and is located 32 kilometres from the Melbourne CBD. Prize money and trophies. Prize money. The total prize money for the 2015 race is $6,200,000, plus trophies valued at $175,000. The first 10 past the post receive prize money, with the winner being paid $3.6 million, and 10th place $125,000. Prize money is distributed to the connections of each horse in the ratio of 85% to the owner, 10% to the trainer and 5% to the jockey. The 1985 Melbourne Cup, won by Martin Newsons, was the first race run in Australia with prize money of $1 million. The Cup currently has a $500,000 bonus for the owner of the winner if it has also won the Group 1 Irish Sound Ledger run the previous September. Trophies. The winner of the first Melbourne Cup in 1861 received a gold watch. The first Melbourne Cup trophy was awarded in 1865 and was an elaborate silver bowl on a stand that had been manufactured in England. The first existing and unaltered Melbourne Cup is from 1866, presented to the owners of the Barb as of 2013. It is in the National Museum of Australia. The silver trophy, presented in 1867, now also in the National Museum of Australia, was also made in England, but jewellers in Victoria complained to the Victorian Racing Club that the trophy should have been made locally. They believed the work of Melbourneian William Edwards to be superior in both design and workmanship to the English-made trophy. No trophy was awarded to the Melbourne Cup winner for the next 8 years. In 1876, Edward Fisher, an immigrant from Austria, produced the first Australian-made trophy. It was an Etruscan shape with 2 handles. One side depicted a horse race with the grandstand and hill of Flemington in the background. The opposite side had the words Melbourne Cup 1876 and the name of the winning horse. A silver-plated base sporting 3 silver horses was added in 1888, but in 1891 the prize changed to being a 15-inch high, 24-inch long trophy showing a victory figure offering an olive wreath to a jockey. From 1899 the trophy was in the form of silver galloping horse embossed on a 3-foot-long plaque, although it was said to look like a greyhound by some people. The last Melbourne Cup trophy manufactured in England was made for the 1914 event. It was a chalice centered on a long base which had a horse at each end. The trophy awarded in 1916, the first gold trophy, was a 3-legged, 3-armed rose bowl. The 3-handled Loving Cup design was first awarded in 1919. In that year the Victorian Racing Club had commissioned James Steith to design a trophy that would be in keeping with the prestige of the race, little realizing that it would become the iconic Melbourne Cup still presented today. In the Second World War years the winning owner received war bonds valued at £200. A new trophy is struck each year and becomes the property of the winning owner. In the event of a dead heat of second cup is on hand. The present trophy is made by Hardy Brothers from 34 pieces of gold metal hand-beaten for over 200 hours. Close inspection of the inside of the cup will reveal small hammer imprints. As of 2008, the trophy values were increased and the cup now contains 1.65 kilograms of 18-karat gold, valuing the trophy at $125,000. The winning trainer and jockey also receive a miniature replica of the cup, and the strapper is awarded the Tommy Woodcock Trophy, named after the strapper of Phar Lap. Melbourne Cup Tour. In 2003, an annual tour of the Melbourne Cup Trophy was initiated to provide communities across Australia and New Zealand with an opportunity to view the Cup Trophy and highlight the contribution the Melbourne Cup has made to the Australia's social, sporting and racing culture. Each year, communities in Australia and New Zealand apply for the Cup to tour to the community, and the tour also takes in cities around the world as part of the Victoria Racing Club's strategy to promote the Melbourne Cup and the Melbourne Cup Carnival internationally. The tour has visited schools and aged care and hospital facilities, and participated in community events and celebrations including race days across Australia and New Zealand. History. Early years. Frederick Standish, member of the Victorian Turf Club and steward on the day of the first Cup, was credited with forming the idea to hold a horse race and calling it the Melbourne Cup. 17 horses contested the first Melbourne Cup on Thursday, the 7th of November 1861, racing for the modest prize of 710 gold sovereigns cash and a hand-beaten gold watch. Winner takes all. The prize was not, as some have suggested, the largest purse up to the time. In order to attract a bigger crowd to the fledgling Cup, the first secretary of the Victorian Racing Club, Robert Baggett, decided to issue members with 2 ladies' tickets, calculating that where ladies went, men would follow. A large crowd of 4,000 men and women watched the race, although it has been suggested this was less than expected because of news reaching Melbourne of the death of explorers Burke and Wills 5 days earlier on the 2nd of November. Nevertheless, the attendance was the largest at Flemington on any day for the past 2 years, with the exception of the recently run 2000 Guinea Stakes. The winner of this first Melbourne Cup race was a 16.3 hand-based stallion by the name of Archer in a time of 3.52.00, ridden by John Cutts, trained by Etienne de Mestre, and leased by de Mestre. As a lessee, de Mestre owned and was fully responsible for Archer during the lease. Archer was leased from the Exeter farm of Jamaica Bean near Braidwood, New South Wales. His owners were Thomas John Tom Roberts, Roland H. Hassel, and Edmund Molyneux Royds and William Edward Royds. The inaugural Melbourne Cup of 1861 was an eventful affair when 1 horse bolted before the start, and 3 of the 17 starters fell during the race, 2 of which died. Archer of Sydney, outsider who drew scant favour in the betting, spread eagled the field and defeated the favourite and Victorian champion, Mormon, by 6 lengths. Dismissed by the bookies, Archer took a lot of money away from Melbourne, refuelling interstate rivalry and adding to the excitement of the Cup. The next day, Archer was raced in and won another 2-mile long-distance race, the Melbourne Town Plate. It has become legend that Archer walked over 800 kilometres to Flemington from de Mestre's stable at Tarara, near Nowra, New South Wales. However, newspaper archives of the day reveal that he had travelled south from Sydney to Melbourne on the steamboat City of Melbourne, together with de Mestre and 2 of de Mestre's other horses, Exeter and Inheritor, before being winched aboard the steamboat for the trip to Melbourne. The horses had arrived in Sydney in September 1861. Archer travelled to Melbourne by steamboat again the following year to run in the second Melbourne Cup. This time he won 810 gold sovereigns cash and a gold watch before a crowd of 7,000, nearly twice the size of the previous year's large crowd in a time of 3.47.00, taking to the number of Melbourne Cup wins by this horse. Archer had already won the 1862 AJC Queen Elizabeth Stakes in Randwick, Sydney, and returned to win his second Melbourne Cup carrying 10 stone 2 pounds. He defeated a field of 20 starters by 8 lengths, a record that has never been beaten, and that was not matched for over 100 years. Mormon again running second. Winning the Melbourne Cup twice was a feat not repeated until more than 70 years later when Peter Pan won the race in 1932 and 1934. And winning the Melbourne Cup 2 years in a row was a feat not repeated until more than 30 years later when Rain Lover won in 1968 and 1969. Archer travelled to Melbourne by steamboat yet again the next year. Despite his weight of 11 stone 4 pounds, Archer would have contested the third Cup in 1863, but due to a Victorian public holiday trainer Etienne de Meste's telegraphed acceptance form arrived late, and Archer was scratched on a technicality. In protest of this decision and in a show of solidarity, many of de Meste's owners boycotted the third race and scratched the horses in sympathy. As a result, the Melbourne Cup of that year ran with only 7 starters, the smallest number in the history of the Cup. In 1865, Adam Lindsay Gordon wrote a verse in which the Melbourne Cup winner was called Tim Whiffler. 2 years later, in 1867, 2 horses with the name Tim Whiffler ran in the Melbourne Cup. To distinguish between the 2 Tim Whifflers, they were called Sydney Tim Whiffler and Melbourne Tim Whiffler. Sydney Tim Whiffler actually won the Cup. He was trained by Etienne de Mestre, and like Archer before him raced in de Meste's name but was leased from the Exeter farm. As early as 1865, Cup Day was a half-holiday in Melbourne for public servants and bank officials. Various businesses also closed at lunchtime. It took some years before the purpose of the declared holiday was acknowledged in the Victoria Government Gazette. The Gazette of the 31st of October 1873 announced that the following Thursday be observed as a bank and civil service holiday. The Melbourne Cup was first run on a Tuesday in 1875, the first Tuesday in that month. On the 7th of November 1876, the running of the Melbourne Cup on the first Tuesday in November saw the 3-year-old filly, Briseis, owned and trained by James Wilson SNR, win in a time of 3.36.25. Briseis then went on to create a record that is never likely to be equalled, winning the VRC Derby, the Melbourne Cup and the VRC Oaks in the space of 6 days. She was ridden in the Melbourne Cup by the tiny featherweight figure of jockey Peter Street, Albans. In 1876, at the recorded age 13, Peter St Albans is also the youngest person ever to win a Melbourne Cup. Before 75,000 at Flemington, Briseis, with St Albans in the saddle, comfortably won by 1 length in the biggest field of all time. At 4 o'clock the starter released the 33 runners and they swept down the long Flemington Straight in a thundering rush. Briseis, ridden by what one writer termed a mere child, captured a rare double, the Victoria Race Club Derby and the Melbourne Cup. Shouts and hurrahs were heard, hats were thrown in the air and one excited individual fell on his back in the attempt to do a somersault. The boy who rode the winner was carried around the pack and is the hero of the day, reported the Australasian Sketcher in 1876. Both Peter Street, Albans and Briseis have now become racing legends, and Briseis is regarded as one of the greatest mares foaled in Australia. Briseis wasn't the only sensation surrounding the 1876 Melbourne Cup. 2 months before the event, on Saturday the 9th of September, the city of Melbourne sailed for Melbourne from Sydney with a cargo including 13 race horses, many of whom were considered serious contenders for the Melbourne Cup. The following day the ship ran into a savage storm and was hit by several rogue waves, with Nemesis and Robin Hood being among the 11 horses that were killed. Betting on the big race was paralyzed, to the dismay and anger of the public. Bookmakers, showing no feeling, presented a purse to the captain as token of their appreciation for his part in saving them many thousands of pounds in bets already laid on the favourites who had perished. Perhaps they should have kept the money. However, the outsider Briseis comfortably won by 1 length in the biggest field of all time, and in an extremely good time. So it is unlikely that the horses who perished could have beaten her. 1877 is also the year that the trainer Etienne de Mestre won his 4th Melbourne Cup with Chester, owned by Hon. James White. In 1878, as in previous years, de Mestre fielded more than 1 horse. He entered the favourite Firebell, who finished last, Chester the previous year's winner who fell, and Calamia who, though less fancy, won easily by 2 lengths. First prize was £1,790. The crowd was 80,000 and there were 30 starters. De Mestre's 1878 win with Calamia brought to 5 the number of Melbourne Cups he had won. This record was not to be matched for nearly 100 years when the trainer Bat Cummings won his 5th Melbourne Cup in 1975. Bart Cummings, regarded as the best Australian horse trainer of all time, went on to win 12 Melbourne Cups to 2008, and is still training horses. In 1883, the hardy New Zealand-bred Martini Henry won the VRC Derby, the Melbourne Cup, and on the following Monday retained his undefeated record by winning Mara's Produce Stakes. Far Lap, the most famous horse in the world of his day, won the 1930 Melbourne Cup at 11/8 odds on, the shortest priced favourite in the history of the race. He had to be hidden away at Geelong before the race after an attempt was made to shoot him, and only emerged an hour before the race time of the Cup. Far Lap also competed in 1929 and 1931, but came 3rd and 8th respectively, despite heavy favouritism in both years. There are a few legends of the first Aboriginal jockey to ride a Melbourne Cup. It was believed to be John Cutts who won the first and second Cups in 1861 and 1862 riding Archer. He was reputedly an Aboriginal stockman born in the area where Archer was trained, but was actually John Cutts Dillon, the son of a Sydney clerk, a jockey who rode for many trainers in his long career, and who was one of the best known, best liked and most respected jockeys in New South Wales. It is thought that Peter Street, Albans, was the first Aboriginal jockey to win the Cup on Briseis in 1876. Because Street, Albans, was not quite 13 years old, the jockey was too young to ride in the Cup. Thus, to allow him to race Briseis in the Cup, it was argued his birth date and parents were unknown, and from this the legend of him being Aboriginal grew. Both these legends, however, can definitely be disproved, and history had to wait nearly another 100 years. The first jockey of Indigenous heritage to ride a Melbourne Cup winner was Frank Reyes in 1973 on Gala Supreme, who had a Filipino father and a half Aboriginal mother. Recent years. The race has undergone several alterations in recent years, the most visible being the entry of many foreign-trained horses. Most have failed to cope with the conditions. The three successful foreign raids include two by Irish trainer Dermot K. Weld, successful in 1993 and 2002, and one in 2006 by Katsumi Yoshida of Japan's renowned Yoshida racing and breeding family. The attraction for foreigners to compete was primarily the low-profile change to the new quality handicap weighting system. The 1910 Melbourne Cup was won by Comedy King, the first foreign-bred horse to do so. Subsequent foreign-bred horses to win Cup were Backwood 1924, Far Lap 1930, Votan 1936, Belldale Ball 1980, Atalak 1986, Kingston Rule 1990, Vintage Crop 1993, Jeune 1994, Media Puzzle 2002, Mokaiba Diva 2003, 2004, 2005, American 2010 and Dunedin 2011. The 1938 Melbourne Cup was won by trainer Mrs. Alan MacDonald, who conditioned catalogue. Mrs. MacDonald was a successful trainer in New Zealand. However, at the time women were not allowed to compete as trainers in Australia, so her husband's name was officially recorded as the winning trainer. The 2001 edition was won by a New Zealand mare Ethereal, trained by Sheila Laxon, the first woman to formally train a Melbourne Cup winner. She also won the Caulfield Cup, a 2,400 metres race also held in Melbourne, and therefore has won the Cup's double. Mari Linden became the first female to ride in the Melbourne Cup, when she partnered Argonaut Style in 1987, in which she ran second last in the 21-horse field. In 2004, Mokaiba Diva became the first mare to win 2 Cups, and also the first horse to win with different trainers, after David Hall moved to Hong Kong and transferred her to the Lee Friedman stables. The 2005 Melbourne Cup was held before a crowd of 106,479. Mokaiba Diva made history by becoming the only horse to win the race 3 times. Trainer Lee Friedman said after the race, "Go and find the youngest child on the course, because that's the only person here who will have a chance of seeing this happen again in the lifetime." Due to the 2007 Australian equine influenza outbreak, believed to have been started by a horse brought into Australia from Japan, neither Delta Blues nor Pop Rock participated in the 2007 Melbourne Cup. Both horses had been stabled in Japan. Karawa, an SW trained like a falcon, also was not be permitted to race in Victoria, despite Karawa being close to the Victorian border. Like a Falcon was ordained as the new staying star of Australian racing in 2005 when he ran 4th in both the Caulfield Cup and in Mokaiba Diva's famous 3rd Melbourne Cup victory. But serious leg injuries saw the horse not race for another 20 months. Efficient, the previous year's VRC Derby winner, won the race. In 2013, Damien Oliver returned from an 8-month ban, after betting against his own mount at a previous race meet, to win his 3rd Melbourne Cup. Timeline of notable events. 1869, the Victorian Racing Club introduced the 4-day spring racing carnival format. 1870, the race was postponed. 1876, the youngest jockey to win was Peter St Albans on Briseis, aged 13, but actually 12 years 11 months 23 days. 1882, the first bookmakers were licensed at Flemington. 1888, the first gold whip was presented to the winning Cup jockey. 1894, Strand starts were introduced to Flemington. 1896, the Melbourne Cup was first filmed. This race was won by New Haven. 1915, first woman owner to win was Mrs. E. A. Widdis with Petrobras. 1916 the race was postponed. 1925 the first radio broadcast of the Melbourne Cup was made by the Australian Broadcasting Company. 1931 the first year the Totalisator operated at the Melbourne Cup. The Totalisator Agency Board was introduced in 1961. 1942–44 the Melbourne Cup was run on Saturdays during the war years. 1948 the photo finish camera was first used in Melbourne Cup. Rimfire beat Darkman. However, many on-course punters believe the result should have been reversed, and it was later found that the camera was incorrectly aligned. 1958 the first Cup start from starting stalls. 1962 Fashions on the Field was first held at the Carnival. 1985 the first sponsored Melbourne Cup, and the first $1 Million Cup, with $650,000 for the winner. 1987 first female jockey to ride in the Cup was Mari Linden on Argonaut Style. 2001 Sheila Laxon was the first woman trainer to officially win the Melbourne Cup. However, Mrs. A. McDonald with Catalogue was really the first woman trainer to win. Women then could not be registered as trainers in Australia, and it was her husband who was the registered trainer. Mrs. McDonald's win was as a female trainer of a female-owned horse. 2003 first Australian female jockey to ride in the Cup was Claire Lindop on Devon. 2003 the first Melbourne Cup tour was conducted around Australia, and the biggest crowd, of 122,736, is recorded at Flemington. 2005 Mokaiba Diva became the only horse so far to win the Melbourne Cup 3 times. 2008 the Cup King, Bart Cummings, took his 12th win in the Melbourne Cup with Viewed. 2010 150th anniversary. American becomes the first French-trained horse to win the race, and Gerald Moss the first French jockey. 2011 French-based horse Dunedin wins from Red Caddo in the closest finish ever. 2014 2 horses died due to racing in the 2014 Melbourne Cup. Cup favorited Mayor Rakti, who was carrying the heaviest weight since Think Big, died of heart failure in his stall after the race, and Araldo broke his leg and had to be euthanized after being spooked by a flag in the crowd after the race. 2015 first female jockey to win the Cup was Michelle Payne on Prince of Penzance. 3-time runner-up Red Caddo did not finish due to a fetlock injury for which he was later euthanized. Public holiday. Melbourne Cup Day is a public holiday for all working within metropolitan Melbourne and some parts of regional Victoria, but not for some country Victorian cities and towns which hold their own spring carnivals. For federal public servants it is also observed as a holiday in the entire state of Victoria, and from 2007 to 2009 also in the Australian Capital Territory, known as Family and Community Day, replacing Picnic Day. As early as 1865, Cup Day was a half-holiday in Melbourne for public servants and bank officials. Various businesses also closed at lunchtime. It took some years before the purpose of the declared holiday was acknowledged in the Victoria Government Gazette. The Gazette of the 31st of October 1873 announced that the following Thursday be observed as a bank and civil service holiday.